Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Lee Cronin's The Mummy, starring Jack Rayner, Leah Costa, May Calamaway, and Natalie Grace, directed by Lee Cronin, the same director who gave us Evil Dead Rise a couple of years back. Now, I have done this series before a long time ago with the original Universal stuff, and then the 1950s Mummy movie, and then I came back with the Brendan Fraser ones, and the god awful Tom Cruise film, which I tend to forget about that one nowadays. But will this one be as unforgettable as that film? I was expecting this one not to do well, but as far as like the box office goes. So, will it do good with my opinion? Let's talk about it. We open in Egypt with a family led by the magician, as well as Layla Khalil driving home. And when they get home, Layla finds a dead pet bird in their house bleeding to death as the magician crushes the bird to finish it off as it was already dead. So why crush it? Because it has to be super gory. Now, this is an R rated movie for one of the reasons being the gore. And it happens nonstop to a point I'm like, enough with the fucking gore. This director throughout the movie, as this director did this in Evil Dead Rise, now he's doing it here. And keep in mind, I thought Evil Dead Rise was a middle of the road movie. It was okay, not a great movie. And the magician with her husband checks on a dead body as it blows out the fire, and they were using until the husband is killed by a hook as the dead body awakens and curses the magician, as the opening was absolutely dreadful. As we move on to the Cannon family, led by journalist Charlie, played by Jack Rayner. If you don't remember him, he was the boyfriend of Tessa from Transformers Age of Extinction. His wife Larissa, played by Leah Costa, and their two kids, Katie, played by Natalie Grace, and Sebastian, whom I don't know this actor from anything whatsoever. And the acting by these actors are absolutely very bad in this movie. As Katie learns a new language by tapping on the table as Charlie sees himself on the TV and sees he's using his hands way too fucking much, as he asks Larissa about it as she's pregnant with their new daughter. As we learn, Sebastian throws Katie's doll off the roof after testing a parachute. And again, the acting in this is so fucking bad. Katie is upset with her family going outside, getting visited by Layla's mother, the magician, and they talk, and she shows Katie a magic trick until she gets a beetle in her mouth to possess her, while Charlie sees a lot of unwrapped candy packages and looks for Katie as the magician kidnaps her. And Charlie goes after them as a sandstorm comes in and loses her, and Charlie and Larissa go to the police station in Cairo and speak with Dahlia Zaki, played by May Calamaway, whom I reviewed a couple of times in Moon Knight and Gladiator 2, as she interrogates them about when the last time they saw Katie was, and her boss believes they're lying and believes they did it, and the cinematography looks awful. 8 years later, in New Mexico, somewhere in New Mexico, I forget where the city is off the top of my head, the Cannons live in a new house where they're with their daughter Maud, who is now 8 years old, and grandmother Carmen Santiago, and Sebastian wanted to go on a school trip 6 months later, and they argue about how he can't go on this trip because meanwhile back in Aswan, Egypt, a plane crashes. A man witnesses it while riding his bicycle, and he checks it out and finds two dead bodies there, and runs off and sees a casket in which they take to a church place and find Kitty's body as the beetle gets out of her body and she wakes up just like that. Which makes no goddamn sense, as this movie makes no sense whatsoever. And we go back to New Mexico, and Charlie and Larissa go get a call from the Cairo Police Department and in the U.S. Embassy, learning Katie has been found and is alive, and in a way, I can't make sense of this script. Charlie and Larissa get back to Cairo, and they see Katie in the hospital as she looks like she is possessed, which people say this is connected to the Evil Dead world because this director did the Evil Dead Rise. And they say that this is reminding them of Evil Dead, but this movie reminds me a hell of a lot of the original Exorcist movie, as I was getting lots of vibes from that movie to the point I believe this should have been the new Exorcist, which Meg Flanagan is coming up with, starring Scarlett Johansson, where that feels like a detective story from what I've seen in the behind the scenes filming of that film, of that upcoming Exorcist movie. Meanwhile, Zaki, now a detective, shows them where Katie was held captive, and he wants her to do a better job at finding the kidnappers that her senior officer at the time. And Charlie remembers her, and they take Katie back to New Mexico and put her in the bed rest after the experience she's been through, and meets Maud for the first time. Meanwhile, Carmen prays for her recovery until Katie headbutts Carmen in the nose, and Sebastian doesn't know what to say to her, and Katie freaks out as nighttime comes, and Maud is freaked out by hearing Katie's movements and gets scared while waking up Sebastian until Charlie looks at some old ancient Egyptian photographs while Larissa shows Katie some old family photos. And this is an ugly looking movie, as it's the same director as Evil Dead Rise, as he turned up the gore by a notch 11, as it's going to get boring after a while, or maybe by 1,100. I don't know, but the family hears Katie running around the place and scares the living shit out of them, and they get to her in the attic, and she eats a live scorpion, which sounds impossible, but she did it anyways, and put Katie back into bed after she vomits. And the next day comes as Charlie takes Maud and Sebastian to school with some evil motherfucking coyotes, well, not moving, and they look more like German Shepherd dogs more than evil coyotes. And Charlie tells them not to talk about the events that happened to her while Larissa and Carmen bathed Katie, as well as trim her nails until it peels her skin off, not completely, but briefly. While Charlie builds a lock in Katie's bedroom and finds something completely nasty while under the carpet, while this movie is the ugliest, nastiest movie of the year. And there was a trailer for Evil Dead Burn in front of this movie, and hopefully that turns out better than what this director Lee Cronin did with that film and this film. Charlie looks for Katie as she runs out of the bathroom and stabs her own goddamn motherfucking leg, and they stop it by putting her back in bed, and Charlie considers looking at a new temporary place and argues with Larissa about it and go their separate ways for now. And she tells Katie to say something until she vomits on her, which is disgusting, as this movie disgusted me from start to finish, as this has nothing to do with the original monster movies as well as the ones with Brendan Fraser. And Charlie finds more ancient Egyptian words on Katie's skin that she ripped off a few minutes ago, and he finds Professor Bixler at a college, and again, this has nothing to do with the previous Mummy movies, as I was getting more vibes from the original Exorcist, as this wasn't supposed to be called The Mummy originally, fun fact. But the testing of this movie was turned out so bad that they ended up calling it, I don't know if that's true, but they called it The Mummy. But what would have been the title of this movie? I don't know, and I don't care, as this score was horrible. Like, they're trying so hard to scare the shit out of you when they're not successful at it. It's just noisy. Shirley hears taps from Katie's teeth and connects the words as it says Layla, and Charlie calls Detective Zaki and a girl named Layla, but tells her that, but doesn't get her last name until he looks up some birthday cards for Katie and looks letter after letter until while Maud uses the restroom and is freaked out because Katie sings a different version of You Are My Sunshine. And Maud goes up to the door and talks to Maud, and Katie talks to Maud and possesses her to the point it makes no sense. As Charlie sees the letter from Layla Khalil, as well as the candy wrapper she got earlier in the film, and Charlie tells Detective Zaki Layla Khalil is the name, and this movie is too long at 2 hours and 13 minutes, and at this point, I'm now having a big headache. Charlie goes back to Professor Bixler and hears the language of the ancient Egyptian talking about the devil. And this is why I'm thinking this is supposed to be an Exorcist movie, as I didn't get what the fuck I was watching at this point in time, while Maud calls her teacher a rat-faced C word, which I'm not going to say because that's not one of my favorite words, but if you know that as a curse word, you know what I'm talking about. Right in front of her face, as Detective Zaki goes to Layla's house and looks for her and finds evidence of what they did to Katie until Layla gets home and shot someone in the house, and that I'm led to believe was the magician. Going after Layla and gives her a tape that says Katie on it. And Zaki takes her into custody, and it took her long enough. I mean, Jesus Christ. Charlie takes Sebastian and Maud home from school with troubling news about Maud and doesn't want Larissa to know about it because she has enough on her mind. As it is meanwhile, Katie kills Carmen after she prays for God to get her better soon and throws her out of the window. And all of a sudden, the evil motherfucking coyotes rip her apart as well as eat her dead body. And I was just bored with the movie at this point because it's all the gross out moments from it, and the score in this, mostly in this movie, is horrendously bad. Like, it's trying so desperately, like I said, to be scary, but it's just boring me to death. As Detective Zaki watches a disturbing video of what happened to Katie, which we'll see later in the movie, and in which I didn't care about at that point, but we'll get there. And interrogates Layla about what happened to Katie in that video, and honestly, I could care less about it, and the less I care about this movie, the worse it gets. Leela gives Detective Zaki the truth by paper because she can't speak and she wants to see Charlie while they're having a funeral for Carmen while Katie is trapped in her room. And Sebastian gets Charlie to Larissa as she doesn't want Katie out in the house anymore while Katie speaks to Sebastian and she possesses him while Maud lets Katie out as she crawls like a demon. And Maud gets Carmen's teeth out, and or should I say fake teeth, and Katie bites the neck of Carmen, and Larissa gets her out of, and Katie licks Carmen's blood. And not only am I bored, but I'm also annoyed. As they trap her on a chair later that night, as Sebastian hits his head on his bed, not like the setup of your bed. That's what I mean. While Charlie watches Katie tied up, and they get an unannounced visit from Detective Zaki, showing her the disturbing videotape about what happened to Katie. And I just want this movie to be over at this point, as I like Charlie, don't care what happens to Katie, as she was vomited in the mouth, and at this point, I don't care about how it ends. Sebastian and Maud get Katie out of the chair and peel her skin and starts to attack Charlie, Larissa, and Detective Zaki after opening the door, but can't get in while Carmen gets back up and is possessed thanks to Katie as Charlie goes upstairs as the kids attack. And I'm just checked out of the movie at this point. After the attacking, which I could care even less about, Detective Zaki, with a hole on her throat, lets in Katie, and Charlie decides to get vomit in his own mouth by Katie, and Detective Zaki saying the curse, and Charlie gets possessed by the demon as there's no other way. And they not only get Katie back, but Sebastian and Maud and Katie taps words as well. And Katie taps words in Charlie's casket, and Detective Zaki goes to the mental hospital where Layla is held at, and they bring in Larissa and a possessed Charlie to give Layla her curse back. And the climax made this movie so unoriginal, as this was reminding me of the original Exorcist more than Evil Dead and The Mummy. And what do I mean by that? Let's talk about it in our rating, shall we? I'll give this movie a 2.6 out of 10. The movie is gory to the point I was like, enough with the fucking gore, as it was turned up 1,100 notches. The cinematography looks awful, and the score sounds horrendously bad, as the acting by everyone is absolutely very bad. And I was getting vibes from the original Exorcist more than The Mummy and Evil Dead as far as the original horror movie is concerned, as the ones with Brendan Fraser. And this has nothing to do with The Mummy except for the title of this movie, when it should have been called The New Exorcist. It absolutely disgusted me in a not a delightful way, and the shots felt very out of focus, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And this is an ugly looking movie as it's the same director as Evil Dead Rise, which I thought was mediocre, by and he turned up the gore notch by 1,100, and it got boring after a while, as this is the ugliest, nastiest movie of the year. There was a trailer in front of this movie for Evil Dead Burn, and hopefully it turns out better than this, but Evil Dead, not only this, but Evil Dead Rise, which I thought was okay. And if you see my review of that movie, you'll know why. This wasn't supposed to be called The Mummy, but what was it supposed to be called? I don't know, and honestly, I do not care, as this is a solid non recommendation for this movie, as it's too long for a horror film at 2 hours and 13 minutes. And at the hour and 10-minute mark, I had a headache from watching this movie, and I kept getting more and more Exorcist vibes than The Mummy or Evil Dead, that I don't even know what the fuck I was watching anymore. And I would advise any of you who haven't seen it yet, please don't waste your money nor time, because it certainly wasn't what wasted my time, for damn sure. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for coming back to the Mummy series. And until when the fourth Brendan Fraser film comes out, oh, here we go again.